Alright, so to actually make our soundboard, we're going to use Adobe Animate. It used to be called Adobe Flash. I guess there's a lot more involved with the animation part of it. Um, so, but it's basically hasn't changed too much. When we start off, we're going to be using an ActionScript 3.0 file. And I don't know, let's see what the size of this is. If you want to change your document size, you can. Yeah, let's change that to kind of more of a screen size. Let's do 720 by 480. All right. That will be a little more representative of like a screen, like, you know, most of your computer screens, kind of minimum resolution there. All right. You do have a bunch of drawing tools. Probably most of you will be bringing pictures in for your background. I'm going to just draw a shape here to start. That way I can see that my transparency is there in the background. All right. You do have layers also on the bottom. So, and actually kind of going back a little bit, looking at the workspace, you have, this is called the stage, the area in the middle where you put all your artwork. You have a basic toolbar here, and then you have your palettes, which change on the side. So if I click on my color, actually, depending, I'm sorry, on what you have selected. So you have properties and library here to start. All right, so your properties panel is going to change depending on what tool you have selected. So we do have a full list of tools here, your selection tools. This third one down is kind of useful, your transform tool. 3D rotation, I don't think we'll be using. Lasso is for selection. Your pen, making more detailed drawings. Text tool, line tool, different shape tools, brushes. The bone tool is used for kind of rigging characters and animation. Paint buckets, eyedroppers for sampling color, erasing. A camera tool, which I don't think we're going to learn or use in this. A lot of these tools we did use in the animation class. We probably won't be using so much for this though. All right, so let's, I'm going to save this right away because it's saying it's untitled, which I definitely recommend you guys name your files so that when you're going to look for them, that they're a little easier to find. All right, so I'm going to go and call this my soundboard. I'm just going to put an AM here. All right, then the next thing we want to do is we want to bring in our artwork that we just created. So I'm going to say File, Import, and I always want to import to the library. If you import to the stage, it comes into your stage, but then if you delete it, it's gone and you have to import it again. So it's going to be to your advantage to bring it into the library so it's reusable. Alright, so I have my Photoshop file, and I believe this is the sound file that I want. Alright, now when you open a Photoshop file, what's nice about this is that it recognizes your layers. So, as it's saying here, alright, I do want to have both my layers selected. Alright, so it just brought them in, and it's going into the library here, alright, so on this other tab. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose my first layer, my first kind of instance as it's referred to. So we have this artwork here, and I mean you can move it using the selection tool if you wanted to resize it. You can use the transform tool as we mentioned. All right, so you do have a couple tools there for that. And then what we need to do is to make a button out of it. So I'm going to say modify, convert to symbol, and over here now we can name it again. So that's what I would do, and it's going to be a button. And now when I double click it, we get into what's called the sub selection mode, or the button editing screen. And from here now we see these appearances of the button that we're going to be able to use. All right, so What I'm going to do is right now, this is how it's going to look in the up state, right? If we go to the over and put in a keyframe, it's going to make a copy of that, all right? But I want the other appearance of that. So I'm going to select the car, I'm going to go to my properties, and I'm going to say instance, I'm going to swap it, and I'm going to choose this other appearance here, all right? And now if I go back and I test this by doing a Control Enter, and I hover over, it changes the color of the car. All right. I'll go back through this a little more slowly when I'm done this first time through. So if I'm losing you a little bit, just be patient. It's only one more step I'm going to do today in inserting the sound to that. Yes, Mike? I did file import to library. Okay. So the last thing I want to talk about here today, just getting these set up, is having our sound on here. So I'm going to double click on my button here again. All right. And now I want the sound to play when I press down on the button. So I'm going to, in the down state, I'm going to put in another keyframe. So that's going to have that same appearance as this car here. And in my library, now I'm going to take the sound that we brought in, and you always want to look, hopefully you have a waveform, as it's called, that's visible, and you can test it. But then I'm going to drag this sound onto my stage with that, that kind of frame selected. And if you look really closely, there's a little orange line that goes across on this frame, then that's indicating that the sound is applied there. All right, so if I go back, I press Control Enter, I hover, it changes in color, I press down. Oh, uh-oh. All right, so what's not working here? Couldn't be that easy, could it? All right, so the one thing that I missed there, all right, so what we want to do is in this frame on the down state, you want to make sure that you press this button here, where in your properties you're going to sync the event. So I guess what that's saying is when that event happens, when we press down, that the that sound plays. All right. So that's applying all that stuff, and then the last thing what we would do today, so that we can preview this, or you can post it somewhere. We're going to go to Publish Settings, and we're going to make sure that we're just going to publish this as what's called an SWF file. Your editable file in Animate is called a .fla, still kind of keeping that old Flash, I guess, vocabulary in there or wording. But when we export this to view it, we're going to make it a Flash file. All right, I'm going to leave that on. So then I'm going to press, and actually let's see where this is going. So I'm going to put this back in that same folder. Yes, publish. All right, so it's going through its save process and its export there. All right, so now if I go to test this, let's make sure it works. You always want to test. All right, so we have a couple files here. So, and you can tell by the icon here, this is your editable file, and this would be your kind of preview file. All right, so Flash players are pretty universal also. I know they're kind of getting away from Flash content on the internet, but they still kind of work in this capacity and kind of some gaming and things like that. All right, so just a quick review then on this whole process. So we created our document. We made it 720 by 480. All right, you can bring in your pictures or whatever, but you're going to import them to your library. You place the initial instance on your stage. We then converted it to a button. So actually, I could go back and I could kind of do this the same way. Since this is in my library, but the process, we place it, we convert it to a symbol, which is a button. actually test you guys. What do I do next? Anybody, after I placed it and converted it to a button, what do I have to do after that? You guys, a lot of you guys are going to be watching the video. I don't really want to be going around and doing individual reteaching here.
What's the size again?
720, 480 I think is a good size for that. So I made it to a button. I double clicked it to get to the button editor. I'm inserting a keyframe, which makes another copy of that basically. And then I swap out the appearance of it. Right, so now I have two appearances. And then to get my sound, I'm putting in another keyframe. I'm going to my library, dragging my sound file onto the stage. You see the little orange arrow. And then in properties, we are changing the event, the syncing to event. Test it by Control Enter. And to export it as that preview file, or I'm sorry, we're going to do a publish settings and as SWF.
Would it be okay if I print out like 10 things in color?
Mm-hmm.